What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. I'm not going to go crazy on this one. The Sixers just went into Phoenix, and I thought gave me an effort that I can live with. James Harden was a problem, and you see the difference when Devin Booker and Chris Paul are able to execute beautifully. And in this game, Joel Embiid's 37 points wasn't enough, and James Harden shot 2 for 11 from the field. And that's the difference in this league when your stars score and produce the way that the Suns had theirs tonight. And while your one star had a problem and had an issue after a solid start to the game, he just died off as foul calls didn't go his way, and the game just got to an irritating point in his eyes, apparently. I saw possessions where Landry Shamet should have got annihilated, but instead he got off scot-free, which is just totally unacceptable, and your stars didn't perform the way they needed to. But this is what the Phoenix Suns do. They make it living hell. They dominate you. There's a reason why they're 31-8 at home and 30-6 on the road. They're a fantastic team. All the time we discuss this Eastern Conference, and we want to know what team can accomplish their ultimate goal. Which team out of these 6 or 7 squads, really out of 7, it's not even that many. Who was it? It's the Miami Heat, who seem to be arguing with one another, and the head coach is discussing fighting Jimmy Butler. You know, not great if you're a Miami Heat fan out there. Miami Heat, the Boston Celtics, the Sixers, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Brooklyn Nets, 5 teams or so. There's no one that looks like the Suns. The Suns are legit. The Suns they don't really have many flaws in their game. I always reference that other teams have their own version of the Sixers' flaws, which is transition defense, which is defensive rebounding, too many second chance opportunities when we analyze what the other teams do to us at times. And honestly, I don't know about the Phoenix Suns. So none of these games, and this is kind of perfect to start the show this way, because I had a show on the Fanatic this afternoon from noon to 4. And this is somewhat what carried my show, and there were a lot of interesting perspectives on it. Before we discuss any further, if you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button as well. I greatly appreciate all of your support. If you're looking to buy tickets for any event out there, let's look into some Phillies tickets, fellas. It's a no-brainer. Utilize the promo code BROADS at SeatGeek's checkout page for $20 off of your purchase. It's a no-brainer. It eliminates those fees. And oh, by the way, there's so many fantastic prices right now on SeatGeek. You'd be a fool not to utilize promo code BROADS at checkout. And lastly, TikTok at Broads Media. We're having a lot of fun there. Okay, so you can look at the rest of the way for the Sixers. You got a Pacers effort in there. You know, you got some of these teams after the Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks. But the point I'm trying to stress is I'm just ready for the postseason. And at this point, none of these games are going to change the way that I feel about this team. But Broads, when they played Brooklyn, they looked horrible and they got beat out of the gym and it was embarrassing. You're right. But even with that loss, as I utilize this same reference all the time, and I think it's perfect. When you go back to the 2019 76ers versus the Toronto Raptors series, imagine the Raptors after they get blown out by 20 plus at the Wells Fargo Center, thinking that the series is over because there's another game in Philadelphia and they just lost by 20. What do you think happens? They come back game 4 and they win by single digits. Losing a game in the NBA regular season and even in the postseason, just because you lose by 20, it doesn't mean in 7 games you lose by 24 times and the rest is history. So this game against, I know that they're better than what they put on display that night. So here they are playing the Phoenix Suns and they went toe-to-toe with them and they ended up getting some troublesome situations because the Phoenix Suns are the best team in the entire NBA. But this was a winnable basketball game if James Harden just shoots the ball better and even shoots more. We saw that the night before, and I'm cracking up because I already see a comment in the chat that said, can we please get a better James Harden? What a terrible time for him to start sucking. He just had arguably his best game as a 76er in Staples Center, or whatever the hell they call it these days, crypto world, whatever the fuck it is. They just had one of his best efforts in a Sixers uniform just a day or two ago or so. So just relax. He had a tough one today, though. He had a tough one. And we need him to not, if this team is going to win playoff games. If they're going to go into a series and win a series that's going to be a hard-nosed battle, they need the James Harden from the Clippers game to be there in that game. And he's going to have to shut a lot of people up because the narrative around him, I'm sure he's certainly conscious of, and he understands that it's a talking point. James Harden doesn't come up big in big games, and tonight he did not have a big game. I thought he got so flustered and he got so involved in the emotional side that we lost him. And at this point, I think that is somewhat of the James Harden experience. It's when he has it on and he's not bothered by it. He's one of the most sensational players we've ever seen in this damn game. But when he does get hit in his feels, well, it could take him out. And as a primary point guard, see Chris Paul, 19 points, 14 assists. It's a lot easier to run and operate. But the Sixers, they hung in there, and even towards the end in the fourth quarter, I thought there was possibly a chance that they would pull this one out. And that's when Maxey hits a three to stop the drought. We're going minute after minute. You're seeing the clock tick off, tick, tick, tick. No buckets, no field goals, no points whatsoever until Maxey stops the bleeding by making a shot, finally, a three-pointer. Embiid gets low, and establishing a low presence is dominant for him. Obviously, he gets down there and places the ball, and he didn't shoot it. It wasn't even a layup. He basically took it and just placed it right in the basket. Maxey hits another three, and then Embiid goes down to the line and it ends up having some free throws in there. So it was just a major push. But this game was kind of bonkers and all over the place while you see a double-digit run for the Sixers, a 12-0 run, and then the other team goes on their run where the Sixers don't score any points. And it was just one of those where two high-powered offenses and two high-powered teams are basically throwing haymakers. And this told me that the Sixers hung in there tonight against the best team in the NBA. I want to see this team get to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's the low. That's the worst case scenario better be this season an Eastern Conference Finals run. The East is significantly less than what you just saw with the Phoenix Suns. I'm using them as that's the best. Knowing the East isn't at that level, still great teams, still fantastic teams, and other squads that can hang with the Phoenix Suns too, even though the Suns have their tier. Because when the Sixers went on that spurt, what ended up happening? They countered perfectly. Devin Booker gets a mid-range J. I don't think Danny Green fouled him at all, but puts him to the line, which was a disgrace. And sure, the referees at times, they were obnoxious and they were hard to handle, and I thought that it made me uncomfortable with some of the decisions they were making, but that wasn't the difference in this team winning this game or not. It got tough after that first quarter where they scored a ton of their buckets. I don't know how Devin Booker, though, was able to execute the way he did in that first frame. He's chatting, right? He's chirping nonstop, moving his mouth. You can't motivate the best players in the game like that. You can't give them outside noise or internal fire by starting to run your mouth, especially if it's someone on the bench who, who are you at the beginning of the game to jaw your damn mouth nonstop in the direction of a Devin Booker? I mean, seriously, what do you think is going to happen? This is why the young kids in these leagues, the young cats in this league, this is what happens when you give them something to hold on to. And Devin Booker was ridiculous. Wasn't as hot as the game played out after that first frame. In the second quarter, obviously, nowhere even close when it came to him getting some buckets. But you know who did do some solid work? Happened to be Tobias Harris. That was probably the best Tobias Harris we have seen all year long. It was really good out of him, and I don't know what that means because there doesn't seem to be a algorithm or an equation to get Tobias Harris to play this smoothly. Great decision making, know what he's going to do with the ball. Every time we do give Tobias Harris a positive and speak about a really great performance or just a really solid effort that we can all appreciate, it all stems from the same exact topic and the same exact bullet point that's next to his name, and he lets the game come to him while being aggressive aggressive at the same time. He's just picking and choosing the right methods to go about each possession, where in times past, it's overthink. That's putting the ball on the floor and putting him in a position to fail, basically. While now it's the complete opposite. I have seen the conscious effort of taking threes, catch and shoot. He knows what he needs to do, but he's also got to execute it at the same time. I love the fact that he kept his foot on the gas, but he did it based off of what the game was giving him at the same time. He wasn't forcing it. He wasn't trying too hard to incorporate himself. It happened organically throughout the game, and it was a difference maker at that point. The Sixers looked like they were kind of in rhythm and in a groove there for a bit. I don't know how we get that Tobias more efficiently. I really don't. Anyway, after that Booker and one, just to backtrack a tad bit, speaking about the Suns' response to that Sixers push that maybe we thought would give them some sort of energy to finish out the game with a victory. DeAndre Ayton, good ball movement. The ball's moving. Guys are moving within flow of their offense, and they get the look that they're looking for pretty much 3 inches away from the rim, and it kind of stopped everything that the Sixers maybe thought that they had in that moment. Embiid tweaked his ankle. You see him hobbling. Even after a block when he returned from the initial hobble, he starts to hobble again. And that just fits what I've kind of been discussing for a bit of time now, which is this team's beat up, but every team is beat up. This is the journey of an 82-game regular season. It's not as if the Sixers, when you see Harden at times play games slow and he doesn't look as powerful, not as much pop in his step, not as much push as you would like when he's driving to the basket. And Embiid, when he's holding his lower back, that's always the biggest scare. When he bends over towards his toes and he's pretty much holding his lower back because he's feeling some sort of discomfort. Every team has their version of their players who are feeling that same type of body damage to them. That's what happens when you get to this point. And that's why the toughest survive at this situation of the season. Now, when everybody woke up this morning, the Sixers were in first place. First place in the Eastern Conference. You lose today. Some other things happen around the league. The Boston Celtics, now it has shifted, and it looks like they're in the 4 seed. So from the winning and losing perspective, obviously I care about what the rest of the way provides for us. At the same time, my opinion is not going to change. What they do against Milwaukee, what they do against the Indiana Pacers, what they do against any other team that they have matched up left on their schedule this season, I'm not somehow going to go into a whole new mindset and philosophy of who they are. If their 2 players play the best that they possibly can, and then you get a good added bonus, whether it's Maxey, whether it's Tobias, it's just one of them, or it's a combination of the 2, and maybe you get a big night from one player on your bench. It wasn't Niang today. Could it be a Danny Green? That Danny Green sequence had to be the funniest sequence I've ever heard. That looks like pick-up ball. Shoots from the 3. Works hard to get his own offensive board. He grabs the board and then runs to the other corner as he's fading away, fading to his right, and he cashes it in. Nothing but net. Hysterical. Can your top 2 players perform efficiently enough to compete with these teams in the Eastern Conference, the Bucks? Now, today on the radio, I was joined by Marks, and she does some work on ESPN2. She does some work up in New York for Sports Talk Radio at 98.7 ESPN, ESPN2, The Daily Wager. So there's a lot of things that she does, and she joined me today on the Fanatic in studio. We had a blast. And we were discussing the NBA standings, and obviously up in New York, she brought up Kyrie Irving and the way that the vaccination stuff all changed. What does that mean for Kevin Durant? And it was a really interesting perspective. And it's just funny looking at the standings right now after the game, because one point that she brought up is she could see the Boston Celtics as the team to come out of the East. And that's kind of my point that I'm trying to make all the time is, okay, you're not wrong. It's in the cards. It's possible. Just like same with the Bucks, same with the Sixers, same with the Nets, who aren't really an 8th seed. They're not really a play-in team type of squad. They're not. They just didn't have Harden, Kyrie, Kevin Durant, and then they fell apart. But even when those guys were active and when they were available, they were winning a ton of basketball games. The reason why they're in the position that they're in is because their players weren't even there. They just weren't even playing regular season games for you, and yet a bunch of your role players playing severe minutes, and that's why they were in that situation where they were losing and going on one of the biggest losing streaks we saw this entire season. When you play Landry Shamet too much, just as an example, I referenced him with the Brooklyn Nets, which is a bad job by me, considering we just saw him with the Phoenix Suns, and he did make some threes, of course. Forgot about Landry Shamet. He's just been out west. Not that I don't watch Suns games. I obviously do whenever I get the opportunity to, because they are on TV a lot. But just bad job by me. The brain is fried. I spoke a lot today, and it's just all over the map, and it's just kind of hard to settle down after, doing a lot of stuff throughout all the day today on Sunday. Anyway, no one really cares about what I do in my time other than telling you how I feel about sports. So why even go down that road? Losing my train of thought and gathering my train of thought rather quickly here. We were discussing what team would you feel you could at least watch without hating in an Eastern Conference, in the NBA Finals coming out of the Eastern Conference. And my answer was Milwaukee. And my answer was because if the Boston Celtics make it, that would blow. If the Brooklyn Nets make it, that would blow. Not that Ben Simmons would be a part of that in my mind. He wouldn't be. But we had people bring up, I can't imagine him even as a non-player and someone who's just sitting there and part of the roster. I could never imagine witnessing that. There's no way in hell I could do anything but Milwaukee, because once you win a championship, a door kind of opens for you to win multiple. So it's the easiest pill to swallow. And I absolutely understand that mentality, and I agree with it from that angle. But if Ben Simmons doesn't do anything and they do win it in a very hypothetical world, I'm sorry, you win because you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And then the point that was brought up is, well, no, not really, because trading James Harden means the Nets won the trade. No. No one said that they couldn't have won it with those three together if they were playing together. They weren't playing together. That's the problem. Kyrie couldn't because of the vaccination. Kevin Durant was injured, and then you had the situation with James Harden and his hamstring and everything that played out there. When they were balling and winning a ton of games. But that's really not for the discussion today. I know I got a bit sidetracked. I just thought that was fascinating, that was the thought thrown out there with it. And, of course, anytime the name Ben Simmons is brought up, it opens up a ton of emotions that just pour out of us as a whole. Referencing the Sixers, though, looking back at the Sixers and what we witnessed today, I saw a team that I know winning is the most important part. You want to win basketball games. You want to get yourself in the one seed. You want to escape from ever having to think about playing the Brooklyn Nets. It never wants to cross your mind this early because they're not really an eighth seed. Eighth seeds are Charlotte Hornets. Eighth seeds are the Jared Dudley Brooklyn Nets. That's what you should be seeing in an eighth seed, not someone with the type of lethal talent and killer mentality that the Nets have at the upper echelon of their roster. I can appreciate, though, what this team was capable of doing, and that was leaving everything out there, showing us what you have. I'm disappointed in Harden. I'm disappointed in Matisse Thybulle, who could only play 16 minutes. He was so piss poor that he's underneath the basket. Harden zips the ball beautifully right into his breadbasket. He's underneath the rim, and he misses it. Now, he gets fouled. He ends up not making his first free throw attempt, which really is just a big snowball effect of how this crushes you when you desperately need that defense on the floor. He also picks up bad fouls. Maxey was getting picked on. Speaking of defense, we loved when he picked on Tyler Hero, which we should, because that fourth quarter was outrageous, and it was a ton of bonkers feelings nonstop. Here he is making all these shots. Miami, oh, what are they doing? The Sixers don't even have Embiid or Harden. Maxey's flying. Well, what Devin Booker did in the early stages, Dude. That's what I wish we saw out of Harden tonight, because he did it in L.A. against the Clippers. What happened? He was so strong. I would have thought that maybe he would have bottled that up, kept it going, and then applied that same mindset, that screw you attitude, to the floor against a really good Phoenix Suns team. Now, it's not all on him. They make it difficult for you. They cause you a lot of trouble. They do this to a lot of teams. Once again, let me reference their home and away record. 31-8 at home, 30-6 on the road. That doesn't even make any sort of sense at all. So you got to give them credit too. I just want to read a couple quotes, and then we'll open up the phone lines. We'll read the chat room, 856-442-9805. You can climb in to the phone line now, though, even though we'll get to it in just a couple of moments. James Harden said that it was a learning experience and now they head home. Said it's about the Sixers and not the Suns and to be more aggressive. Yeah, see, the thing is, whether he goes out to a birthday party that upsets everyone after a loss, or he moves on quickly from a game that fans feel he should put more emphasis on and more emotions into, I don't agree with that. This league, this is why I always praise veterans and them understanding what it's like to play in this type of league. You got a game on Tuesday. And oh, by the way, you got a game on Tuesday against the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, they just beat the Lakers, beat the Clippers, lost to Phoenix. If I told you that was going to be the case, and by the way, that game in Phoenix, you're satisfied with how hard they played? If I laid that out to you before we even witnessed what went down, you probably would have accepted it and said, okay, I can live with that and fall asleep at night. That's what you have. If I tell you they go 1-1 against the Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns, winning the game at home, losing the game on the road, once again, you'd probably be okay with that as well. So something just to think about. There's so many damn games in the regular season that they all count the same to these guys. They got to win as many games as possible. The Sixers are in a position to be in a good spot for the playoffs, and they have to move on to the next game. They can't sit and cry and pout about it, no matter if it's the Suns compared to the Bucks, compared to the Pacers, compared to any other team in the NBA. They shouldn't put so much into it to the point where, oh yeah, all those plans I had before the game even began, I'm just going to cancel it all and sit in my room and cry in my room and shut the door. To me, that would tell players like Maxey, oh damn. James Harden did what? He canceled all, excuse me. It's not that. Next game. That's the way we need it from our players. It's a lot easier said than done from the outside perspective going, no, put everything into it. You have to just have zero life and only apply basketball and results to your feelings, or we're not going to be okay. Stop it with that. That's a bunch of crap is what that is. I heard Doc Rivers' comments, said he didn't like how many good looks that the Suns were able to kind of have there, and I think that's fair, but once again, they do this to kind of everyone. Embiid was outstanding tonight. Needed Harden to be more in the final quarter. I definitely don't disagree with that. Just kind of spitballing off a few different things stated after the game. Joel Embiid, 37-15, 3 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Questionable calls costed them down the stretch. This is from UStats. I don't know if that's what costed them the game, to be honest. Maybe I'm the outlier here, but I don't sit here and think to myself, the reasons why they lost this basketball game was because the referees. No, I think the issue was more about the fact that the Phoenix Suns beat you. The Phoenix Suns beat you. That was the number one problem. Were the refs perfect? Absolutely not. We're discussing NBA basketball. Okay, the answer is fuck no. Fuck no. Why did they lose this game? Harden shot the ball 2 for 11. He only shot 11 times. Him actually being a threat to score, it gives the other players what they're looking for, even without him putting all the pressure to do it on him. Does that make sense? Probably not. Let me rephrase that. See, I think Harden, when he doesn't have these nights, one, he's frustrated and bothered because he's not scoring and he's not knocking down the shots that he would like to. But if he was to keep his foot on the gas and keep himself explosive in that downhill game and not worrying about everything going on, blocking out the noise, blocking out the calls that he doesn't like, and just keep that motor going, that's going to naturally just open up everybody else's game around him. Instead, sometimes he gets so bothered and annoyed that he just evaporates that aggressive game and then tries to force everyone else going around him. But the reason why it works as effective as it does is because his scoring game is such a threat that the second layer to that is now more open looks because the defense have to suffocate James Harden when he does drive and when he does have that nonstop gear that's just consistently flowing towards you. He's going to have to find ways to remove himself from those emotions that clearly get out of control to the point where Doc Rivers, upset, calls a timeout because the Suns get a bucket when James Harden is nonstop going towards the ref and yapping for way too long. See, that's where it reaches that unacceptable stage. We have a $5 donation from Tim. Hate that Harden doesn't want to shoot or score unless it's ISO. I love to see a few more plays for him besides pick and rolls for Joel. I do like the pick and roll for Joel a lot, to be honest with you. That is something that I think could be bread and butter and work insanely because I don't know how you ever stop a force as big as Embiid when he is rolling that quickly. So it is a play that I think will be a masterful situation to perform a lot of the times against any opponent, really. I think with him, it's all for himself. You talk about drawing up plays, this and that. I think it's Harden. Harden himself has to look in the mirror. Why did we get all those points the way that he did in LA against the Clippers, but then today it doesn't even look like the same exact player? He just did it the game before, literally. And it was probably the strongest we've seen out of him. And that's game changing. That's franchise changing. That's series changing. That's one round deeper changing. That's losing in the second round or at least getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, which is my floor. And thank you so much, Tim, for the $5 donation. It's just the will and not checking yourself out of the game. Once again, I don't want to downplay what the Suns do and how fantastic they are as a squad. With that said, I feel some of it is on the Suns and give them golf claps for being studs. And at the same time, Harden, he just checks out. And that's a knock on him. That doesn't mean that the trade no longer is worth it. It doesn't mean that Daryl Morey is an idiot for electing to go down this path instead of staying with Andre Drummond and Seth Curry, because to me that's asinine. But there are flaws with James. No one said the trade was perfect where now all of a sudden he has zero problems ever. No, there are James Harden problems. There's every player in this league problems, though. There's problems in every great players, too. Giannis can't shoot the ball very well. Giannis always gets dared from three. He overcomes that majority of the time because he has a certain attitude about things. James Harden, when he overcomes his deficiencies, it's a scary sight, and that's what we need paired up with Embiid more times than not. But you'll lose a game because Giannis and his flaws show up, which is he goes 0 for 5 from 3, and he nonstop keeps shooting it when maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't get sucked into their dare. And you lose because he just can't make them. And his jump shot's off, and it's ugly, and it's out of whack. But you win a lot of the times because he does excel in a lot of different areas. And he stays attack mode, and he goes downhill, and he's getting to the line, and he's drawing fouls left and right. Same with James Harden. You win a lot of games because of all the stuff he does do well. But when there are the tough ones, this is what seems to happen. He gets lost mentally. And what stings about it is, because he's your floor general, it affects a lot of the guys. And it affects a lot of the rhythm with this team. And that's just how it does go. 856-442-9805. We will kick things off with Nolan in Hilltown, PA. What's up, Nolan?
Hey, bros, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. Obviously, this was not the result the Sixers were hoping for to finish this road trip, but hey, I will definitely take 2-1, especially going up against two very talented squads in both the Clippers and the Suns.
I can't agree more with you. If you told me this was their outcome before the road trip happened, I'd probably sign up for it. And realistically, this is how I saw it going, right? You could beat an LA team that once we got the news LeBron wasn't available, it made it even easier. But even with LeBron, they don't win many games. So we thought they could probably win against the Lakers. They could probably win against the Clippers, who are not themselves. And injuries obviously play a role, but they're not themselves. And then you go into a hostile environment against a great team, give us an effort that we can definitely applaud and be okay with. And you go 2-1, and we'll be okay with that. This is probably what we would have signed on the dotted lines for.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And also, I wanted to let you know that I will be at the Wells Fargo Center on Tuesday night for that game against the Milwaukee Bucks. So that will be my first time seeing James Harden in a 76ers uniform, and I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Wow, dude, that's going to be a really fun time. Thank you so much, Nolan, for all the support and the great phone call. That's going to be tremendous. There's nothing like getting down to the Wells Fargo Center. It's a crazy atmosphere. The place is just electric at this point of the season, and I don't know. Am I just in the outlier little corner over here thinking I'm done with the regular season? I can't imagine that I am, but I'm done with the regular season. I've seen enough. I know what this team is capable of doing. I know what their deficiencies are. Nothing's going to change with less than 10 games to go. I'm ready for it. I'm ready to see that awesome crowd intensify by 3 because it's now playoff ball and everything just raises just a little bit more. Everyone's blood is flowing just a little bit more. Everyone's intensity just rises to the next tier and the place goes crazy. It's always so much fun at that Wells Fargo Center for sure. I'm jealous. Maybe I look into some tickets, and why not just mention that you can get great ticket prices once again, SeatGeek, utilizing the promo code BROADS. What are we doing here? Get yourself to that game against the Milwaukee Bucks. No? Isaac said Harden is going to choke again. This is probably one of the dumbest remarks that we constantly get, which is Harden sucks, Harden's awful, Harden's a choke artist, Harden doesn't know how to play. The list goes on and on and on with James Harden. I like James Harden. I think that he is an upper echelon talent in this league. The more version of upper echelon talent that you have on your roster, the higher percentage it is to succeed and win. With that being said, bring me James Harden. I want him on my roster. I'm a big fan of when he does excel. He excels more than he fails. Every player fails. Every player has bad moments. Every player has their version of, a sloppy game, a bad effort, a lot of turnovers, tough spots, uncomfortable possessions, bad stretches, bad 1 weeks, bad 2 weeks. Every player has that. James Harden has proven in his career that he does a lot of stellar things, and I will take my percentage, especially when the alternative is a UFA that's leaving anyway. Seth Curry, who's a fine player, a fine starter that definitely gets shelled on the defensive end, but if he's cooking, he's definitely serviceable and someone who can help you out and provide you a big spark. But even if he is drilling shots, I'm sure he's getting targeted big time on his defensive end, which he's going to have to work and put out a lot of effort, which then there's a cause and effect to the offensive side of the game at that point as well. But yeah, give me James Harden. Just ripping him apart as a whole is foolish. Is foolish. He wasn't good today. There has been big games in his career where he hasn't been sharp. There's also been big games in his career where he was very sharp, where he gives you 40, where he gives you a dominant performance, where he's electric and he wills you to victory. There's those games too. They don't get pointed out as much, though, as the one game that is more iconic, or more iconic that is, and I'm kind of using air quotes when I say that, even though I didn't in that specific moment, but more brought up and the focus point. But there's a lot of great games too, and this gives you the best position to do it, so I'm here taking that as a whole. Listening to Suns fans is hilarious. They have 0 rings and act like Warriors fans. Delusional. I personally, Tom, and this is coming in the chat, I haven't had any experience going back and forth with Phoenix Suns fans. Not saying that there aren't many out there. I actually have family that live out in Arizona, and they say that place is just unreal. And right now you can go everywhere and see Suns, Phoenix Suns, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Monty Williams. Everybody loves this team. Jay Crowder giving you a nice how do you do as a role as well. They are passionate for their Suns. It doesn't compare to an East Coast city. They're passionate. But I don't run into people that bother me about the Phoenix Suns. First off, they went to the NBA Finals last year. It was a series, maybe not the most entertaining series in the world, but it was solid and it had entertainment value to it. Way more that stick out to me in terms of history of excitement as a whole, but there were entertaining moments involved throughout it all. I just don't really have that back and forth scenario. This isn't Boston Celtics fans or Brooklyn Nets fans or New York Knicks fans. Phoenix Suns, it is what it is. I'll worry about them if we ever match up against them, and I wouldn't feel confident at all in a 7-game series against the Phoenix Suns. So to be fair, it's not as if Suns fans don't have a right and don't have the ability to talk some smack right now, because if we were playing the way the Suns were playing, if the Philadelphia 76ers were the Phoenix Suns and we were cruising and rolling, and for the third time, let me point this out to you, 31-8 at home, 30-6 on the road, if we were witnessing that occur right now in Philadelphia, we'd be talking that same exact smack if we're going to keep it 100. So it's definitely going to happen. Isaac said Harden doesn't really show up, but he did the game before, but Harden doesn't really show up. He's had triple-doubles here, but he doesn't really show up. He's had rougher moments. He's had great games. That's what he has done so far when changing teams and now incorporating himself with a big man who's an MVP and trying to establish the best way to go about things. No, he's never done anything. That's crazy. That's just picking and pointing out. You got to look at the entire body of work. He first came here. They won their first 5 games or so, and everyone was losing their mind and talking about how awesome it was, as they should have, as that was the right move. But that's my point, to say he hasn't really shown up. That's not true. Even that series against the San Antonio Spurs that everybody references out of James Harden, there were games that were very, very good in that series too, but that's never mentioned the same way. And I get it. Once you got a closeout scenario, what you can do, things of that nature, but still. I think the laziest narrative in the entire world is you'll never do anything with James Harden. You could say that about anyone and have a really good chance of being right, because it's that difficult to win a championship. Congratulations. You are so intelligent. You are so smart to basically say it's really hard to win championships, so I'm going to guess that someone won't. Oh! Kudos to you for putting your testicles on the table. Kudos to you for putting your ball sack right there. Please, come on, grow up. It's one of the laziest points I'll ever hear in sports about any player, because every player, when you chirp and you go after a top dog, every player at one point isn't a champion. And the percentage of you being right is higher than being wrong. I'm not going to give you praise, and I'm not going to give you a standing ovation for choosing something that gives you a higher chance of being right. Whoop-de-damn-do. I'll still take my chance with it as a whole. Once again, based off of what the circumstances was before, which is a Seth Curry and an Andre Drummond. Everyone's assuming that was good enough all of a sudden. All of a sudden, that's okay, and you're willing to die on that hill because you're afraid now that James Harden can't execute the way that you demand. 856-442-9805 if you want to call in and share your thoughts with me on the air. Jonathan, text into the Anytime Hotline. I feel like people are overreacting to this game because we went from number 1 to number 4, but the thing is, it's only by a half a game, and that was at the best team in basketball. No doubt in my mind, we'll turn it around and win at home on Tuesday over Milwaukee. Yeah, I mean, you see how many games are involved. Right before the game, they're in first seed. They lose the game, they're in fourth seed. There's so much bouncing around when you schedule watch throughout the next next handful of days and the next couple of weeks that you can't get yourself so tied into where it is at this very moment, because with a blink of an eye, you can shoot all the way up. Now, to be fair, that means with a blink of an eye, you can go in the other direction too, which is what you saw tonight after the loss. But I agree, which is there's no reason to rip your hair out or scream in disgust in what they did. Let's be real. If you're being 1,000% real with yourself, the Phoenix Suns are a better team than the Sixers. Doesn't mean the Sixers blow. Doesn't mean the Sixers suck. Doesn't mean the Sixers stink. That's not true. The Phoenix Suns are a very good basketball team and the best team in the entire association. That's a favorite to win. The Sixers playing this way, it makes a lot of sense on what we saw. You know, they came out hot. They were really scoring at will. You figured at some point, even though they were going toe-to-toe and Embiid established himself early, he was going mano-a-mano with Devin Booker. You did have Harden sprinkle some points in there early. That was definitely something that helped out at that time, but he just completely evaporated. My point is, if you can agree that the Suns are better, and this is the way that you lost. Not that I'm just some happy, hey, we can lose games and I'm just the happiest guy in the world. No, but I have to keep it real within logic too. If we can all agree that that's a better team and you lose while you're in a dogfight in the fourth quarter, you make your big push and then that said great team counters with their good push, which is enough to hold on and win. Isn't that kind of making sense on how it kind of shaped up? Let's go to Aiden in Newcastle, Delaware. What's going on, Aiden?
What's up?
What's going on?
I'll say I'm not really worried about the loss. It's just like the one thing that pissed me off is like the last couple of defensive drives that when the Suns had the ball the last couple of possessions, they just let them run down the court, get in the paint as freely as they could, and there was like no defense at all. They're more worried about complaining to the refs than they were getting back on defense. That's what just pissed me off, honestly.
Yeah, and that's something that we know is part of their brand at this point, which is when they don't get the calls that they're looking for, they do take themselves out of the game spiritually, and that can't happen. Now, in terms of them getting beat down the floor, though, just in general, I think part of this squad's identity also is their transition defense is awful. So there's no changing that. Unfortunately, that's going to be a part of this team. It's not just going to automatically change. So the question is, can they outscore and outgun teams, knowing that sometimes you look at fast transition points and getting up fast and moving quickly in the open court, teams are going to execute in that way. It's just inevitable.
Right. I mean, I'm not really worried about the loss. I feel like if we beat the Bucks, then we'll pretty much be penciled in like a top 3 seed. Like their schedule the rest of the year is not hard.
No, it's a great point, Aiden. And actually, thank you so much for calling in. We broke this down earlier on the radio, and they do have the easiest schedule when you look at these other teams and what's remaining in their schedule when you're talking about this half game back and fighting with everyone else at the top of this conference. The 76ers do have a chance, if they handle business against the teams that they should, to land in a spot that makes them feel better than, let's say, being matched up with an opponent that might not necessarily be as far down as the list as they are due to their injuries. And we all know which squad I am referencing. So when you look at their schedule, they play the Bucks on Tuesday, the Detroit Pistons on Thursday, Saturday afternoon against Charlotte, the Cleveland Cavaliers on the road, Pacers, Raptors, Pacers, Pistons. So the Pistons twice, the Pacers twice, the Hornets, and you have the Raptors and the Bucks left for your more difficult opponents. I think that there is a chance if you do what you are supposed to do, and we know at times that it doesn't necessarily pan out that way, but if they do what they're supposed to do, majority of these games coming down the stretch, they should be in an area and in a landing spot that we can all nod our head and go, all right, it's time. Philly unite, or whatever they're going to go with this year, that they're going to write on that damn hardwood, and they're going to utilize on shirts, and they're going to sell all sorts of merch. Whatever path they use, whatever phrase they have, I'm sure we'll go, all right, it's game mode. It's game time. And I'm ready for it at this point. I'm done with the regular season. I hate it. To be honest with you, I'm not really having that much fun anymore. Today's different. There's a couple games. The Bucks will be different. Those games are highly more exciting, and they bring you there a little bit more. But in the grand scheme of things and in the bigger picture, I'm done. It's time. You got Phillies baseball ready to rock. You got spring training happening. I'm starting to get sidetracked by Mickey Moniak, Bryson Stott, Bryce Harper, Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, and all the dogs that I'm excited to wear in Phillies pinstripes. That the regular season, all right, what is going to change in my mind? The standings, though, my mind will be the same. The standings, though, seeing that it's going to be a trampoline, it's going to be a pogo stick, and teams are going to be jumping one after one after one, there is more of a focus. There is more of a point to really study and analyze. But in terms of grasping who the team is going to be, don't you know? If you don't know, that's problematic. And with the Miami Heat, the Miami Heat would be the one. That would be the one right now, based off the circumstances of them basically jawing at one another, and they're consistently seem to be in a little bit of a toxic environment as of late because they're blowing leads and they're losing to teams that they shouldn't on the reg. And, you see the New York Knicks do some damage, all that. That's the only team that has a bunch of question marks. The other squads, we know the Bucks. We know the Sixers. We know the Suns. We know the Celtics. They've turned it around insanely, and they're a damn good basketball team that's playing with a ton of swag and a great load of confidence. So let's go, right? Let's go. We'll go back to the phones as well. Good evening. You're on Broads Media.
What's up, bros? This is Mason from Lansdale.
Hey, Mason. What's going on, man?
Nothing much. I'm just a bit disappointed with this one, obviously because it was a winnable game, but more so because I thought the hustle tonight, like in the first half, was like the hardest I've seen this team hustle. And I know Doc loves to say, oh, we had a lack of hustle, oh, we lack this, but like tonight with the first half, I think we definitely were hustling a lot. The shots definitely stopped falling towards the end of the second quarter. I think that's when the momentum stopped. Lack of ball movement, and like you said, with not getting calls, I think we just completely checked out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a part of it, and I referenced that a little bit as well. But I also feel this is what the Suns do, right? The Suns know how to play, and they're ran by Chris Paul, and you can see the difference on when he plays the pace that he wants to, and he starts dicing you up at will, and he had all those assists, and he scored 19 points as well. And Devin Booker was locked and loaded, countering those buckets early on, too, which was disappointing because it would have been nice to maybe go out to a 10-point lead if the Sixers were able to score like they could, and Devin Booker just didn't get motivated by someone yapping away the way that they did. But, I just think at the same time, this is what the Suns do. So maybe the Sixers did play hard, but the way that Monty Williams and Chris Paul figured out, okay, this is what they're doing. Let's just keep attacking for the rest of the 30 minutes of game that we have and we'll be okay. And they did. And this is why the Phoenix Suns are such a dangerous squad.
Yeah, most definitely. I have notes here. I made sure to put down here. The Suns know how to close. There's a reason they have the best record in the NBA right now, and they're playing as great as they did.
That's a great point, actually, referencing the closing ability. Not that the Sixers can't close. We definitely emphasize the times they don't more than they do. The Sixers can, but you're absolutely right. You see a Chris Paul and a Booker and opening wide open shots for Crowder for three the way they did late. They just do it to a different degree.
Yeah, and losing to the Suns, it's let's not overreact to this. I mean, we got James Harden mid-season. I feel like the team isn't completely in sync yet, and that just happens with a mid-season trade, And before I pop out, I do have one question about this game. Do you think that Harden should have shot more like Maxey? Because Maxey was struggling, but he kept shooting the rock, and I like that. Do you think Harden should have done the same thing?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mason. I need James Harden in a lot of games to be more aggressive. What he did with the Clippers, against the Clippers, that is, I almost need to see more of that consistently. That was the most that he looked that strong, to be honest with you. And I need more of James Harden to be playing that style. Now, you said they're not as in sync as maybe they need to be for a playoff run, and that's natural by mid-season trades. And you're absolutely right with that assessment. At the same time, though, like I was referencing before, there's 8 games or so. I'm not trying to devalue what 7, 8, 9 games can do for a team chemistry-wise, but at the same time, I don't think it'll be as much of a jump as we need it to be to change change the end result. I feel at this point, the Sixers are who they are. There's not going to be, because at this point of the season, it's not as detailed as that. It's get me to the promised land. That's why you hear Joel Embiid throughout the entire regular season. I'm pacing myself. I'm waiting for the playoffs. I need this energy for the playoffs. There's a reason why players do this. So when you see a scenario where there's 5 games left, 4 games left, 3 games left, and you think that, the details are going to be so important because they're ready to go for the playoffs, and that's where their mind's at. Yes, but no. Because the other mindset is, I've been waiting all year long. We're 3 games away. Just get me there, please. I'm done with this. I don't want to play anymore these regular season games against the Pistons. Pace, get me through. That's the mindset of majority of these guys, as it should be. So that's why even with these games against the Pacers and these bad squads, the Sixers are who they are. And I'm excited to see the result when they go up against another team who are what they are at this point in the season. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good evening. You're on the air.
Hey, bros. How's it going?
Going well, man. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, not too bad. Not too concerned about the loss. I mean, it was good to see that they were fighting. The only negative thing I got to harp on, just because I really put Harden as like a premier scorer. I think it was great that we got him, but I can't stand when he just kind of checks out. I mean, like, he didn't score at all in the third quarter. I know he didn't get the calls from the refs. They were pretty bad overall. But there's times where, like, he gets the ISO matchup. I'm like, okay, he should be able to blow by this guy or create something. And it's just like sometimes he feels like he's running in mud. I don't know if it's a hamstring, but I'm really intrigued to see in Milwaukee if he can maybe get like one game against a really good team before the playoffs of him like stepping up and doing well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, where the Nets, the whole entire team stunk. Tonight on the road against Phoenix, he shot 2 for 11. So you're absolutely right when it comes down to it would feel nice in our bodies and the morale would be higher if prior to even facing anyone in a 7-game series, he exploded for a night that was, what we saw basically against the Clippers. If anyone stayed up Friday at 10:30 p.m. until 1 a.m. to watch that blowout where you basically got rest organically the old-fashioned way with Joel Embiid sitting on the bench and playing less than 30 minutes, which was great. But yeah, I mean, I would hope that we can see something along those lines Tuesday against Milwaukee. But I almost wonder too, and maybe I'm being naive, maybe I'm being way too optimistic, but if Joel Embiid keep referencing pacing all the time, is James Harden going to turn into another gear in the postseason? Because as a veteran savvy guy, he knows too that, all right, it's time to hit that next switch. It's time to flip it, and we'll just go into our dominant mode. And maybe that's what he'll do in the postseason.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's not stupid. He knows that he has a track record of everybody saying, oh, he's just, going to the next team's giving up on somebody else, and he doesn't perform in the playoffs. So he knows he's going to have to perform, and that's the only thing I kind of question. I mean, like, does he have that killer mentality? Like, all right, I'm maybe not playing well right now, but I'm going to really, second half, I'm going to kick ass like a Kobe Bryant would think or an MJ would think. And sometimes I question him, but we'll see.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll say this to that point, and I appreciate your phone call. I don't know how many MJs and Kobes are out in this world. You know what I mean? To say, well, I don't know if he's got MJ in him. I don't know if he's got Kobe in him. You're right. I don't think many people do. And I don't compare MJ and Kobe level to Maxey just letting it fly, even though he was struggling. Maxey's a willing dude, and he's a willing shooter, and he's definitely not afraid of moments, but there's a whole different atmosphere, a different planet. They're not even from planet Earth, the way that they go about things. Even Embiid, and how dominant Embiid is. You mentioned Kobe and MJ, and there's no way that James Harden's there, but that doesn't mean that there's some sort of negative towards James Harden for not being there. It is fair, though, to wonder why, whenever adversity seems to hit, he does shut off and he does crumble. And there's a problematic cause and effect that happens when that's the case. And you're discussing a dude who runs your entire offense. It changes the way that defenses have to apply their focus on James Harden and this team's offense in totality. So when James Harden gets out of whack, it can be very concerning, and it is a part of him. It's not going anywhere. That's part of the Harden experience. You just have to look at the times where he doesn't have those issues and he is shooting the ball well and he is letting it fly. Is there a hamstring problem? I think it's more of just this is who he is at this point in his career, which is it's less explosive. It's less dynamic. He could still do it and he could still target and he could still attack that rim and get into the paint and have that floater or that lob to DeAndre Jordan or anybody else. It's still in there. It's just not 4 years ago. I'll still take this aged James Harden. Chad thinks that I'm delusional. Okay. I don't know why. Why am I delusional? Because I feel that NBA players know that there's a different sense of urgency than regular season and postseason. I'm just basing it off of the words that were thrown out there by the big fella, by the big man, even in the earlier stages. I remember playing Orlando, and they started out so bad in the first half against Orlando to the point where people were complaining on Twitter, it's time to fire everyone. It's try to make all sorts of big moves and big splashes. Embiid and the rest of the team shine in the second half, and he spoke to the media saying, look, it's just how this season goes. It's 82 games. It's long. Sometimes you just can't put 100% out there all the time because then by playoffs, you don't have anything left in the tank. You're just destroyed. Your body is broken down. And look where his body is now. Think about what it would be if he even applied the 100% to all those other games that he somewhat managed the maximum level that he was willing to put out there on the floor. And that's the way you have to go about things. Now, that doesn't mean that James Harden now all of a sudden will never miss a shot and he'll never have bad games. That's not my point. But the overall question about asking, can James Harden realize, too, that there's a different level to play at in the postseason and he can turn the page to a higher level also? To say that that's some crazy, bizarre question to ask is foolish, in my opinion. Now, we're getting some more text messages on the Anytime Hotline. I'm not really concerned with the result of losing to the Suns at the end of a West Coast trip. I'm more so bothered by the way Doc handles games like this. I'm not a major coach basher, but sometimes the rotations and defensive assignments can be head scratcher. I think Harden looks as cooked as he does partially on Doc. Doc running him into the ground. I do think that James Harden plays him a lot. He played 30-plus minutes against the Clippers. He does seem to play him and Embiid a little bit much, and that's why I was calling for a night off the way that they did on the second half of a back-to-back against Miami, and that did satisfy me. There is truth to the minutes, but I also feel that you're just downplaying the fact that James Harden has a lot of miles on his tires too here, right? Like, the only reason James Harden is here in his career is because Doc Rivers plays him a lot. I think Doc Rivers does have a little bit too much of James Harden involved at times, knowing his age. But the biggest number one issue is where James Harden is in his career. That's number one on the list. I don't have a problem with Doc Rivers tonight. I'm not sitting here screaming and throwing haymakers at Doc Rivers postgame for anything today. Today was more on players not executing. Matisse Thybulle stunk, had to yank him off the floor. James Harden stunk. You could see visibly that he was upset. The head coach had to call timeout because of how upsetting everything was and then freaking out at the referees. Doc, not so much. It's not Harden on defense. It's not Harden on offense. It's his defense. Nah, that's stupid too, because the alternative was what? Seth Curry on defense? You want to talk about miserable defenders. James Harden's an even better defender than Seth Curry. So to say that you're pissed off with his effort on defense, the alternative's worse. The alternative of what you had was miserable to the point where Kevin Huerter annihilated Seth Curry last year. So to me, if you start nitpicking and screaming at the fact that James Harden plays defense a certain way, you're just completely neglecting the fact that the alternative to James Harden was Seth Curry. Seth Curry couldn't defend anything. So yelling about James Harden is silly when just saying his defense is bad. Because the defense, based off of who was in the lineup, before James Harden took over was traumatic to watch. I'm being told to go watch then. I watch every game. I'm not telling you James Harden's a magnificent defender. I'm telling you that you bitching about his, but then realizing that Seth Curry was your other option. What are we doing here? Here's another text message. Hey, bros, we need to play B-ball Paul more. These Doc lineups in the third quarter are so unathletic, it's pathetic. I don't think I trust B-ball Paul that much. If anything, I maybe would go with Charles Bassey more. I don't think playing Bassey or Reed over DeAndre Jordan is the difference in you winning a championship or not. I don't think it's the difference in you going farther in the playoffs or not, but I would still try it because I know DeAndre Jordan is slow as molasses and gets picked apart with the pick and roll, and he can't move his feet very well, and he's slow, and it looks so lethargic out there, even though I'm sure he's trying and he's willing to put everything he has out there on the table. He's just not very good anymore, and he's completely washed. So I'm with you. I would try something different. I would look for a different player too. At the same time, though, I just don't think that that's the difference, bigger picture either. So that puts me in a spot where, what do you want me to do with that? What do you want me to do with that? That's kind of where I'm at. So, with that being said, that's my thoughts tonight on what we saw with the Sixers. I could sleep okay at night. Tonight, I could sleep all right and acknowledge they gave me what I asked for. You won your first 2 games on the road against the LA teams that you deserve to beat. You gave me a strong night of hard work against a better team. And we'll see Tuesday. If they win on Tuesday, and they do it convincingly at home, just like they did before the All-Star break against this said team, except that one wasn't in South Philadelphia. Remember that Christmas Day game, too, where they shot lights out? I think they made 99.6% of their threes, what it felt like. They were just cashing in left and right nonstop. But if they win, strong, and this one doesn't feel as bad, even though, to me, on a scale 1 to 10, how bad it feels, it's like a 2. Feels like a 2. There's not much to it. It kind of seemed like the inevitable result. So with that, I want to thank everybody so much for hanging out with me. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, that thumbs up button as well. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you